hollow. The video you're about to see has been classified 18, which means that it may contain strong scenes of sex and violence, which could be quite graphic. Viewers who are easily offended are warned that it may contain some very explicit language, which may frequently mean the use of sexual swear words, such as bollocks, wanker.
Fuck me! Fuck me!
Take it like the bitch you are!
Hey!
Oh, well, sounds a bit rude, bit of a doable.
1, 2, 3, 4.
In the past 20 years, attitudes to sex have changed enormously. A glimpse of stocking on TV used to be something shocking. These days, however, we're not happy unless there's full frontal nudity and wall-to-wall shagging. And that's just after the summer wine. Sex had always been a subject that inspired comedians, both on stage and off. But the alternative comics went further than ever before, filling their acts with sexually explicit material that would once have been the preserve of top-shelf magazines and news items about President Clinton. Knob and clitoris gags became commonplace, the former being all over in seconds, the latter taking at least a couple of hours. It's at this point that one must inevitably ask, could you just rub a bit lower down, please? Why did things need to change? Let's look back at the days of innuendo and remind ourselves how far we've come, as it were.
Whatever has happened to the central heating in here? My ballpoint will never function in this weather.
I think people at the time did feel like trailblazers because, you know, so much of humour up until that point had been built on innuendo, you know, and carry-on type humour, where you implied it, but you never actually said it.
Good morning, Mrs. Slocum.
Good morning,
Miss Brahms.
Captain Peacock.
1 minute late.
You're lucky to have me at all, Captain Peacock. I had to throw my pussy out before I came.
And then alternative comedy came along and it said vagina and it said fuck, you know, and all these things that people hadn't expected to hear and were shocked by.
Because, you know, when you do stand-up, you travel around the country quite a lot and you get to stay in a lot of very horrible kind of businessmen-type hotels, and there's inevitably, like, the porn films on, you know. But I've actually worked out a really good game you can play. It means you actually have to watch one of the films. All the plots are the same, basically posh woman and East European gardener.
There still is a kind of very odd relationship between men and women in terms of talking to each other openly about those things without going red.
But what you do is you watch the film, you take a salient phrase from the film, something like, "Suck me harder, Mrs. Belcher," right? And then you go down to the dining room the next morning, stand at the door and go, "Suck me harder, Mrs. Belcher," and about 50 businessmen choke on their cornflakes.
Comedy is a taboo-breaking thing, and our taboos are a little bit fragile in our society, in our culture, and the way we address one another and the subjects that we deal with. And there are certain places you don't go into in day-to-day conversation, and a comedian can do that.
And I opened it up on the first chapter, and there were the titles, the title, I should say, The Socialised Penis.
Helen Lederer, in her piece for Stomping on the Cat, had done a whole thing about the social penis. She'd read a book called The Social Penis.
I had to laugh because I had sort of images of lots and lots of, you know, sort of getting on famously with lots and lots of other, you know, sort of going to parties, wearing funny hats.
And she did a very funny thing about that. And it went out, and I can't remember what the time slot was. It was maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Totally sort of whole blog. Anyway, seriously, I think that's it.
And then Dawn and Jenny, in their piece, had got just a passing reference to a clitoris.
Well, my husband, John. John, right? Well, he came to me, okay? He told me about you. Well, I don't like to say.
No, about what? About what?
You sure? Sure. Okay. About your clitoral frigidity.
Clitoral frigidity?
You can't even say it now, you see. You have to be young to be able to say that. I think I remember somebody mentioning to us that that was a bit risky. And I think that we decided that we absolutely had to say it. It was very necessary to say it, and we fought for our right to say it.
We would forgo the £200 that was our fee and walk out.
Yeah. We've got a bit militant about it for absolutely no reason.
Let's share it, right?
Right.
Anyway, it went for viewing, and suddenly, we can't put this out, we can't transmit this. Edit it. And we said, we're not going to edit it, I'm sorry, that's ridiculous.
There was a time when you could just say period, clitoris, all those things, and people go, ooh, they're being a bit scary.
Take our clitoral frigidity, or don't have us at all, I think was the idea.
So this strand that was running through quite happily, suddenly it went out at 11:15, Dawn and Jenny's one, which was, as has subsequently been proved by the audiences they've won, probably one of the more accessible of the 7 shows. And it just amused us that, the social penis had been perfectly all right the week before, but clitoris was obviously too strong meat for the, I suspect, boys at Channel 4, and that had to go late. So if you want a clitoris, boys, it's after 11 o'clock, don't forget.
Because I have a lot of problems at the moment, I mean, not only with John and my clitoris, you understand.
You've got to remember, at the time that it was moved, a significant number of people of both sexes didn't know what it was called, or where it was.
I did bring out a book last year called Clitoris. Didn't sell terribly well. Apparently men couldn't find it on the bookshelf.
We did drop it once when we did a gig up at Bolton Wanderers Football Club.
Oh, we did. We were in Nat Lofthouse's lounge.
We were. And we realised that our entire audience were sort of 60 plus, and we...
And a Polish youth orchestra.
Yeah, there were, yeah. And we were changing in the toilets, and we had a quick discussion about should we say that or not say that. We're aware that it can be offensive, and these are all old people, and should we or not? And then I think in the end we decided we wouldn't, and it went really well, so we were okay.
Yeah.
So old people must have clitorises as well. What a horrible thought.
This is true. I was at a gig once, and I said the word clitoris, and a man in a 3-piece suit and a copy of The Guardian under his arm stood up and shouted, "It's an anagram for solicitor!" I love it when you say something and an audience laughs and then goes, am I allowed to laugh at that? That's what I love about it. That's why the best jokes are like that. When they laugh before they get their politically correct dictionaries out and realise that they, it's like when they laugh out of instinct.
The last thing I want in bed is a good laugh. If I want to laugh and come at the same time, I'll toss myself off with a glove puppet. Yes, I will. I just have always done it by nature. I think that I've always had a bit of a dirty mouth. But I hate it. Hate it, hate it, hate it. When men say that women shouldn't drink. Fuck off. We didn't get pissed, most of you would never get a shag. I've had people come up and say, I really enjoyed it, but one of the other things I really enjoyed was watching other people's faces. And there are certain people, especially management who've seen it sort of several times, tend to spend gigs looking around, seeing who's absolutely frozen in horror.
If you're pushing back a boundary, there you get a shock value, whether you're a woman talking about the size of men's penises, or a man talking about his inability to perform after too many drinks, or whatever it is. There's a little bit of shock value, and there's a whole new area opened up as well.
So you start having sex thinking, fantastic. Yes. And then it dawns on you. Oh, no. Oh, I'm dying to have a fart.
British people do love a good sex joke and a good toilet joke, so you can combine constipation with a bit of intercourse. Oh, you're in.
I went round to his house and he said, just jump in the car. I'm nipping indoors to get my sunglasses. Christ, he had a car and sunglasses. He was so cool. You see, I still think that poo and farting is very, very funny indeed. And that was another sort of half-cocked theory I had about comedy, is that the human race is designed to laugh because of the fact that we fart. We are destined, programmed to find things like that amusing, because otherwise it wouldn't happen. They are so funny. And I'm sat in his car, right, and I'm up to here with wind and excitement. And I couldn't contain it any longer. And I braced myself. The comedy begins and ends with the trump. I mean, just going to the ladies' toilets and hearing someone in the next cubicle just going, such a joy. Thank you very much. And I let out this long, lingering, walloping, great green fart. And then I'm wafting it. He comes out, he gets in the car. The first thing he says is, by the way, have you met my 2 mates? And there, unconscious on the back seat, Terry and Stan.
Men and women were so different. Here's a big difference, I think. A woman can be in an elevator full of men, pass wind and no one will think it's her.
Fart in front of your partner's right, it doesn't matter. It's a natural human biological function. So I thought to myself, next time I see her, I will fart out loud with pride. I did, she wasn't embarrassed. Her dad was mortified, as was the rest of the congregation. There'll be other funerals, do you know what I mean?
Becky, the keys to the handcuffs, I'm sorry!
Aid and I now have always been attracted to the comedy of lechery and the comedy of embarrassment.
Smells like the drains have gone again. Oh, look at those couple of stunners down there. I think they're starbirds. Yeah, bound to be, mate. Either that or topless models.
The best gag in Britain today is something I'll never have, so I'll never be a really hot comedian. Because it's big tits. Put them on a barmaid, put them on a nurse, everybody loves them. A million studio audiences can't be wrong, can they? Big tits, best gag in the world, eh?
He, you know, you could get a 5 or 10 minute routine, which is basically nothing except talking about women's tits, saying, isn't it dreadful the way women have their tits laughed at, and how ludicrous it is. And I'm not criticising you for that. It's I'm wrapped in admiration that you can have it both ways. That is literally having your cake and eating, or having your tit and eating it. No, that's not quite right, is it?
Tits, 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 best gag in the world. We must have about 150 players in the audience tonight. Weren't you wetting yourselves, eh? Dear me, ladies, how do you get up in the morning, eh? You must die in the bathroom mirror. Up comes your nightdress, there's my tits, eh?
A couple of times, women in the audiences kind of woke up in a sort of beery haze and heard me going, big tits, big tits, big tits, and a couple of bottles got thrown.
Wish I were my doctor, eh? I wouldn't get many of these to the pound, would I? Brilliant.
It's great that now we can have fun with sex without, to a certain extent, without worrying about being sexist, because there has been a sea change. Young women do have a different, I think, media image of themselves.
Men are mollified by tits. We don't know why. We just are. Don't even have to see naked tits to get mollified. We just freeze up, even at the sight of cleavage. Waitress leans over the table the wrong way.
Sometimes I run into fans, you know, on the street, or you get a letter from a fan, and they, you know, really just don't get it. They have a different view of what you do, you know. They think that, you know, their hatred of women or other people of, you know, other colors is being reflected by you, when in fact it's not.
That's how we can end war. Get the Goodyear blimp, paint it up like a big tit, put a nipple on it. Fly over the Middle East during a confrontation. And another damn one. Oh, look at the tit, look at the tit, oh, the tit.
I envy women's ability to communicate. I also envy the fact you have breasts of your own. Oh, you're so lucky. Must be so nice after a hard day at work, full of stress and tension, just to go, oh, look. Oh, that's better. I don't know how transsexuals manage. If I had a penis and breasts, I'd never leave the house.
Let's see them then. What size are they? 38. Oh, come on! Well, it's 32, but it's double D cup. Double D. Yeah, well, that doesn't mean anything. Double D means double dumpy, that's all that means.
We did play a lot of school kids. And we did do them doing how you have sex.
Have you ever seen a man's toilet parts? Well, a man, right, has got 3 dangly toilet parts. And the middle one is the important one. And when the man wants to have it off, the middle one stands up. It gets sort of hard.
We were young then, and then, so those characters would have been closer to our own experience.
And it's a bit like a sort of cactus, and it's got all spikes coming off the top of it. And he calls it his todger. It's not really even about the characters, it's about the power struggle. One of the characters could see that she could completely dominate the other one by making up lies to terrify her with. She obviously doesn't know what she's talking about, but she knows she doesn't know what she's talking about. It's not as if this is knowledge that she thinks she has. She's making it up on the spot, and is enjoying how much she can torture the other one or frighten her. By now, the torture's about this thing. About this thing. And there's a big sort of metal spike coming out the end of it. And he gets on top of you and puts the torture inside and tries to break the hymen, and eventually it breaks and a lot of green slime comes out. True.
Because I don't know who it was that invented the various methods of contraception available, but I hazard a guess it was a man.
When we did the very first Man from Auntie show, the show ran very slightly long, and an audience of several million tuned in at 10 o'clock, not to see Ben Elton and the Man from Auntie, which they knew nothing about, but to see Question Time, so quite a conservative audience, and caught the whole of the last routine where Ben vividly demonstrated the different methods of contraception available for men and for women.
Roll up, roll up, roll up for Ben's comparative guide to contraception.
And we got something like 800 complaints about the show. I mean, an enormous number of complaints, including a lot of unconscious comic ones, like people saying, "I do not expect to have condoms shoved down my throat at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night."
Believe it or not, some men, instead of glorying in their good fortune, actually object. They say, "I don't want to wear a rubber Johnny. I don't like them. I don't like condoms. They ruin my sensitive experience. I'm sensitive and I don't want to wear one because I love you, darling, and I want us to feel each other properly. And I don't like rubber Johnnies because they're false and I'm sensitive. And I don't want to wear it because it's false and I love you and I'm sensitive and I love you." So go on, love, stick a bit of barbed wire out.
It seems proof that this male establishment dominates medicine in that, you know, whilst no end of ingenuity has been thought about how to stop women getting pregnant, you know, bits of barbed wire up and massive doses of hormones that might give them heart attacks, men just slip a bit of rubber over the end, that'll do.
The word fanny is deemed by the BBC to be a shocking word. Oh, I can see they were right, yes. Oh, I can see that many of you are a bit shocked by that. You're close to fainting, aren't you, yes? You won't be able to sleep tonight, will you? In the middle of the night, you'll wake up, cold sweat, staring eyes. I just had this awful nightmare where Ben said fanny on the telly.
The BBC had let me say fanny willy-nilly. I never would have written the toot-toot routine, which I thought was rather a good routine. So I never found the small censorships put on me remotely debilitating. I always found them a challenge.
The debate began to find a euphemism for fanny. Me, a few of the guys from the BBC, a few beers, spending licence payers' money, trying to think of a user-friendly term for the female front bottom, so that the British public might be spared the shock. Do you know what we came up with? Toot toot.
Interesting, we got to the end of the series, of that first series, and did a programme which was almost all about sex and the different types of sex. Sex as it is in the movies and sex as it is in real life, which I think was considerably less morally justifiable, but very funny. We got about 400 calls, of which about nearly 300 were from people saying, "I know you're going to get a lot of complaints about this show, but you should ignore them."
Real sex is something that we deal with alone with our partners. The myth of sex we share with the rest of the world. We all got to see the same films, but when reality intrudes, we have to survive alone. And it's difficult. Let's face it, the first time a toot toot toots, it's a shock. Of course it is.
Private fear is a tremendous source of comedy. If you can connect with the audience, connect with their fears because you share them, then you've got a real laugh.
Nobody's warned you. Not your mum. Not the movies, not sex education. I mean, everything's nice, it's going nicely. And then, what was that?
If you were making a joke about sex, it would always be at your expense, you know. So, I mean, it's always been a part of my comic persona to, you know, to make myself out to be very flawed, you know.
Ah, this is the most fun I've had that doesn't involve rubberware, yeah!
And, you know, a worthless human being, really, which is true.
Just get this racket through the wall. Oh, she's in. This row. Oh, bloody nerves, imagine. We had the local hunt through 5 times. I think the whole of society talks more about sex and sexuality, so I don't know if comics have led that. I don't suppose they have. They've just reflected society, I would say.
And I have to just say this, I'm sorry, but I think very thin blokes are crap for sex, aren't they? They are. They are, because if I swing down off the wardrobe on top of a very thin... breaks. Whatever type of comic you are as a woman, you always want to be the other type that you're not, you know. But I'm a very rude comic, and I always have been. There's nothing to get hold of. It's all little arms, little legs. You get so frustrated, you have to shove the whole bloke up in the air.
What we have now is much more many more visible women on television who are projecting their sexuality and their sexiness in a really full-on sort of way.
And he grabs you by the hair and slams you down on that table, and those dishes go flying in 1,000 different pieces in 1,000 different places, and you don't care if they were your great-grandmother's dishes. She's been dead for 40 years. Fuck her. It's your turn now.
Doing it in a kind of as obvious a way and as confident a way as the men are.
Upwardly, downwardly, inwardly, outwardly, around and around, again and again and again. And at that moment, he looks at you the way only a man in real love looks at his woman. And you're looking at him going...
What's interesting about where we are now with comedy is that almost anything is sayable.
He said, so, Scott, you're a gay comic. How do you go down in the States? And, I showed him.
My being on stage is provocative, though. Just my being on stage is a political statement. My being an openly gay man, especially in Britain, an openly gay American with his own political agenda, perhaps, that is provocative.
British guys are uncircumcised. I didn't know this. Oh my God. And this one British guy, I'm not going to overgeneralize, but he tended not to bathe. Whatever.
I realize that audiences in the mainstream don't mind hearing about sex between women. In fact, they like it. But sex between men literally frightens them.
But he was also uncircumcised. Are you with me? He dropped his pants. I'm like, are you going to serve crackers with that?
When I'm playing mainstream audiences, I leave the penis-to-penis contact out of the act. It makes it easier for me. The gay stuff for them is enough.
No, yes, you're right. I am. Let's face it, love, you don't need to be Desmond Morris to work it out, do you? Wake up, smell the cologne.
Sadly, I think God chose that I would never be an gay comedian. I just couldn't do that, I don't think.
The main difference between a straight man and a bisexual is about, 4.5 pints of lager.
We all still do anti-gay material, but now it's okay because we're laughing at ourselves.
I don't sleep around for the sex. I sleep around for the decorating tips. Really. Bad blowjob, but fabulous drapes, you know. So.
I don't think of myself as outrageous and the things I do with the audience as outrageous.
I think, you see, childbirth is actually God's way of saying that heterosexuality isn't that natural. Oh, come on, it's gonna be easy to get a penis up your arse and an entire baby out of your vagina.
I just chat to them really, and I suppose I'm constantly surprised by how far they want to take it.
Some of the men not so sure. Women at the back, they're nodding, going, yes. And my boyfriend wants me to do both.
I said, do you, would you mind if tonight maybe we tried anal sex? What do you think? And she looked at me, and she said, "What again?"
People have made a big fuss about the fact that I do so-called sexually explicit material.
I thought I must get the light fixed in that bedroom. I don't know where I'm working half the time.
People heard references to sex and they thought, this is sexist, isn't it? If it's about sex with a woman, it's probably sexist, so, sexist.
Well, here's my advice to any women here. If you want to find out if anal sex is dangerous, there are books, there are brochures. There's the Citizens Advice Bureau.
I wasn't reacting against political correctness. I just wasn't aware of it when I arrived. It hadn't actually reached Smedic.
If you want an honest, objective, fair-minded answer, don't bother asking a naked man with his knob in one hand and some Johnson's baby lotion in the other.
Someone described me as the Billy Graham of anal sex, sort of evangelising that I'd brought it to the masses.
And he'll say, look, tell me if it hurts, I'll stop straight away.
If that made one couple who'd never thought about anal sex give it a try, then my work has been done.
PC went so far, it got really, really boring. So I'm really, really glad that men have been allowed to have their balls back. Because, you know, there's a time when, like, a man is, you know, you have to tuck his penis between his legs. You know, it's like, it just wasn't on to be seen to be a man. And I find that, I mean, I hate new men. They're really boring. Give me a proper man any day, you know where you stand.
I don't want to die in a Nova. That's not very rock and roll, is it? I want to die shagging somebody. I don't want to die in a Nova.
I had sex with somebody recently, and it had been so long since I'd been with somebody that when I came, I called out my own name.
I wrote a little letter to the makers of Gillette. Just a small note. Dear sir, 2 16-year-old twin sisters, a line of cocaine, 3 bottles of champagne, big house in Holland Park, indoor swimming pool, jacuzzi, parents away for a fortnight. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you might find that that's the best a man can get.
I think what's happened is that we've been through political correctness. We've been through postmodernism. We're kind of out the other side. And I think that people now feel like they can sort of, in a way, say what they want and do what they want.
What fascinates me about love is I can meet a girl, fall in love with her, and think this is my ideal partner. I can never get over this person. You split up with them, you get over them, and you meet someone else. And that new person's so much better for you that they make you realise the last person was nothing. Can you relate to that?
I think the whole new laddism phenomenon is just the old laddism one which was sort of suppressed a bit for a while, do you know what I mean?
Then you split up with them, I could never go over them, but you do, and you meet someone else, and they're so much better for you that they make you realise the last person was nothing. And this happens again and again and again. And I think to myself, how much bigger can these girls' tits get?
Comedy depends entirely on context. You know, something that's funny amongst a group of friends is spectacularly unfunny when said, you know, on stage in front of 2,000 people.
Hello, Mr. Sweary, fucking you ain't up.
On the other hand, you know, again, being a good comic is about finding how far you can go and, yeah, making people laugh guiltily.
Get in your box, Mr. Sweary, fucking you ain't up.
When it became cloying in the mid-decade and we weren't allowed to say the C word, for example, the 4-letter word that begins with C that's even ruder than the F word, that was it. Even for Alexi, that's when we started saying, fuck this. You know, because there were rules. They were cloying, so that's when we started using the C word as much as possible.
Fucking cow, if you'll pardon my French.
Even though you were being obscene and being very rude, you had to be funny as well, or you just wouldn't last 5 minutes.
Fucking you ain't you fucking and knock it on the head. I don't have to remember any of this now because it's all written on the inside of my hat.
Yeah. It's still taboo.
Well, we've incorporated it
It's
into our
still
everyday
and
language.
because it's still the only taboo word, it's the funniest word, to be honest. And if you want a really big laugh, I think it's the word to introduce into your lightweight routine.
There are other ways of saying the C word, of course, such as the expression Bernard Manning. Thanks to the influence of alternative comics, Manning's brand of sexism and racism has been largely stamped out and is now only fashionable in certain working men's clubs, and of course the Metropolitan Police Force. But what other legacy has alternative comedy left behind? Next week we'll be looking at the contemporary scene and asking why it is that 20 years after the birth of the new comedy, we're still no nearer finding a cure for Noel's house party. And is the new generation of comics still the alternative, or are they simply the new mainstream with better makeup?
And parents should tell you the facts of puberty. Look, your hair's going to go greasy, your face will become a general plague area. Here's a book on the Black Death. Tufts of hair will grow on your chin, not in a sexy stubble way, but in a continuing plague theme. Down here, I'm not even going to talk about that. Here's a picture of your Uncle Jim.